here we get to the fun part of the evening. This is the first time I've ever run a panel discussion, so please bear with me. I'm used to having a bit more preparation. I don't know what you guys are going to say, but I'm sure it'll be great. As we mentioned, here we have some fantastic women who I'll introduce in a moment, who are technical superwomen. And we'd love to hear about their origin stories and how they got to where they are. And they're from different companies, different levels of tech, and different levels of their career. So hopefully there's something that resonates with all of you, and you get something out of the session. As I mentioned before, the link is still up there. Please post any questions. We've already got a few questions on the general channel. I'll keep checking, and hopefully we've got a few more. I do have a few up my sleeve as well, just to trick anybody if things get quiet. But hopefully we don't resort to that. So first of all, we'll go along the row here, and if everybody can give a very short, 2-sentence introduction to themselves, just so everybody knows who they're talking to. So firstly, Kruti.
Hi everyone, my name is Kruti and I am from India, and I moved to Australia about 10 years ago, and I am CTO of Sheba Rideshare now.
Hi, I'm Gwenny. I'm probably the newest to tech here. I only transitioned to tech last year at the start of the year, so it's been about a year now. I started off doing classical music after high school, and then I went into teaching and curriculum development. And then I did a boot camp last year, and I've started doing DevOps, and I'm currently doing cloud engineering intern role at Mantle Group, just down the road. They're a Google Cloud platform consultancy. And I also work one day a week at a startup doing a mix of web dev and curriculum development, and I work one day as a teaching assistant at the coding boot camp that I did.
I had something else prepared, but that's very different. So mine is from a land down under, a girl grew up around technology and wanted to be a programmer. 3 decades later, I've now joined the enterprise mobility team at ANZ, and I deliver applications to employees to help them improve their experience. My superpower is knowledge archaeology, so I help uncover lost knowledge and publish it for other people to find. I have curiosity and fearlessness to hunt down unknown processes and discover how they work, and to decipher things that don't make sense. Through the years, I've built a network of experts to ask when I need help, and women who inspire me are Xena, Sailor Moon, and Wonder Woman. So, yeah.
I'm Melissa. I'm a senior developer consultant at Telstra Purple. I'm originally from California and moved to Perth about 5 years ago, and then just moved to Melbourne in August, so I haven't been here too long. And I've been in the industry for about 7 to 8 years. And yeah, I don't know, I'm a web applications developer, so yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Susie. I'm senior Android developer at Cognizant. I am 13 years Android old, so I guess I'm quite Android old. Apart from doing Android at night time, I also do Flutter, and it's my passion right now. I'm not sure when I will change.
Awesome. So I'm going to launch straight into the questions. We have one here from Francesca, who's asked to keep this sort of topic going. What's been your greatest work accomplishment? Does anybody want to jump in here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was working with an agency a couple of jobs before, and through that agency I was working for a startup called Unlocked, and I made some changes into Twitter's advertising platform called morph. I made some changes into their open source SDK, and that change was apparently some positive change in terms of their inventory, so they wanted to know what happened in that. So, and FYI, just a bit of background, I used to be a mobile developer as well before, and yeah, so they called me to the Twitter, so I went to the Twitter headquarters in San Francisco and worked with them for 2 days, and that was my biggest achievement. I was very proud of myself, so yeah.
I think that deserves
one from,
Go for it.
at the end of last year after I did the bootcamp, I was at NAB doing a DevOps internship, and that I kind of thought coming into it being new, I'd be, you know, really inexperienced. I didn't expect to be able to add a lot of value or to feel ever like I could contribute meaningfully. And everyone was really nice. There was like no reason for me to think that other than myself. That's the way it goes, I guess. But yeah, what I ended up spending time doing was researching a new technology for them called Packer. I'm sure some of you probably work with it, which is like a tool for creating machine images. And I ended up getting like a working Packer file, which was like my first thing at my first job in tech where I actually got something to work. And I was so excited, and I ended up having to show it to quite a lot of team leads because that whole department had never used Packer within the department. So yeah, I guess bringing a new technology into an established team was, yeah, it felt good to be able to do that.
Any other achievements?
I have one that I really want to share. In 2009, when I first started with Android, at that time I was embedded engineer, and one of my tasks is to run Android on a different board, different platform rather than the. At that time, the phone was G2, and we wanted to run Android on a different board so that we can create a new set-top box. Right now, Android set-top box is so common, right? At that time, one of my job is to migrate the library. What library is that? That library is the driver to display the image, whatever Android provides on the screen. And with a lot of help, especially from my leader at that time, I successfully make the screen display for 2 seconds. And well, after that, with some other help, we successfully really make it display, and the display later on we use a TV for that. And it was at the Expo, yeah, it was shown as the Expo in 2009 in Japan. That is my greatest achievement ever.
Should we move on to a different topic, or do you? Yeah. Okay. Well, this is actually one I was going to direct to Susie, but the others might have some insight as well. What are some of the ways you tackle learning a new technology like Flutter?
Well, my source of truth is Google. To be honest, I know most people like to go to Stack Overflow to find answers, but I always go to Google and I compute my questions and I ask Google directly. And most of the time, the first answer from Google is what I normally find, but it does not always answer the questions exactly the way you want it, so you will have to do some tinkering, but that's fine. Eventually it will work.
Does anybody else have any tips for how they're tackling new technologies?
Yeah, for me, I always just go and find tutorials. Or use places like Pluralsight if you can get a license for that. There's free ones if you're a student. And then also just actually setting up an app. And if you have any friends or see any open source libraries that are using that technology, you know, pull that down and have a play with it on your own machine. I think is the best way.
I find asking an expert is good. So the Flutter hack night is like every month. It's like, I have a new problem. I need to update my Flutter. So asking it. So I think last month there was one person who gave me a really good YouTube channel. So I'm going to learn more about Flutter through that.
Cool. So here's another question from Slack, from Amelia. What's an action we can all do in our daily lives to help advocate for ourselves and for others?
I heard a strategy that's at, I think it was Obama's team did it, and I think they made it maybe public for the first time, and it's amplification. So other people might have heard about this, but you could talk to your colleagues or to the people around you, whatever gender, and agree that you'll amplify each other's voices. So if someone gets talked over, or if someone's idea is, you know, credit is given to someone else, if those kind of situations happen, or if maybe someone's not speaking up for themselves, you could agree, I think, with each other that you speak up for each other and that you're going to kind of have each other's back in those situations and amplify each other's voices. So that's something I kind of like the idea of, because you just can't always, I think, of course we need to advocate for ourselves as well, but I think it really helps to, you know, it gets exhausting always doing it for yourself and experiencing microaggressions. So I think, yeah, it's helpful if you have other people supporting you to do that. I don't know what others think.
Yeah, another thing which I do personally is, I think you mentioned it before as well, that we women love to push ourselves down a lot. Like we are the biggest critics of our own self. So whenever I have that back of my head, that voice that no, you can't do it, or something where I'm like backing off, that's the thing I first choose to do. And I push myself to do it consciously. And I think keeping that conscious effort in your head that you want to push yourself to be a better person, better version of yourself, that's how I be self-advocate. We women generally are really good in terms of being advocate for other people. And I think I like to believe that I am as well, so I work more towards my own self now. Yeah.
For us, we have a gratitude and thank you culture. So helping, so if you see somebody who has done something good or has helped you in something, you give them a card that says, thank you to this person for helping me with this by the person, your own name. And it helps promote that to great visibility. So we also have a wall where you can stick it. So first you tell the person, this is what you're grateful for. Then it goes up on the wall and people can look at it and see what other people have achieved.
Awesome. So just in case anyone's having trouble getting on Slack, is there anybody who wants to ask a question in person?
Sure. Hi everyone. My name's Monique and I'm thinking about starting coding or getting into tech. Just interesting because it's diverse people as well. How do you think Melbourne ranks as a city for tech, not just only as women but also for career options and progression globally?
Melbourne's really good. I have seen, I have, in my opinion, I think Brisbane and Melbourne are the two places which are really good in terms of startups, working in new technologies and tech specifically, but Sydney, where I feel it's a little bit more corporate, so Melbourne is pretty good, I think so, yeah. And there are a lot of meetups and community gatherings where you can learn more and more, and community like it's a smaller community as well, right? So everyone knows each other, everyone helps each other out, so yeah.
I agree. I think there are a lot more. I'm from Brisbane originally, and I lived in Sydney for, I lasted 4 months, and then I came back to Melbourne. I was like, no! But before I was in tech, I was interested when I was in Brisbane like years ago. I've been interested for a long time. That yeah, there's nowhere near as many groups up there. I hear the community is absolutely amazing. That there's so many meetup groups here with such a variety of interests. There's so many, particularly for women, opportunities. So for people that are thinking about changing, there are a lot of paid internships, a lot of scholarships. Like I got a scholarship for my boot camp, which was half of the fee off. So like $10,000 off the cost. It was fee help, but yeah. There's just a lot of opportunities, I think, and a lot of companies that are aware of the crisis we have at the moment with gender balance, and they really are trying to get more women in tech. And Melbourne just seems to be a beautiful community, like for that, in my experience anyway.
Yeah, I was living in Perth the last 5 years, as I said, and there is a really good tech social community there, especially supporting women, but it is a lot smaller. You know, Perth is a much smaller city in general. So because of that, you have the contrast here where since it is so massive, there's so many people, it's a massive community and a lot more opportunities for jobs and stuff like that.
And to be honest, since I moved to Melbourne, I joined all these meetup, all the tech meetup, and people over here are really talking tech rather than networking. And I really appreciate that, and it's really helped me a lot, because normally when I talk tech and I expect people to understand, people here, they actually understand. And there are more opportunities, so much opportunities compared to where I came from or where I've been before.
Awesome. So another question from Slack, from Hara, and Hara, I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit. but she's struggling to prove herself in classes, to prove that she's able to cope against the men in the class. What would you give her advice on dealing with the gender inequality in tech in general?
I don't want to answer every time first.
Can I clarify the question though?
Is it a class for college?
Is it about class or is it about?
She said that she's top of her class, but she still feels like she should prove herself against the boys.
You need to have a chat with yourself if you're top of the class. But yeah, I have an answer because I was in a boot camp that was dominated by men. One of my lovely teachers is here actually. It was horrible because before that I was in a lot of girls in tech and women in tech events, so I was used to being surrounded by female-dominated areas. And I remember walking into the boot camp and it was like 40 people, maybe I think 10 or 11 women, the rest guys, quite a lot younger as well. So it was just a really different culture. It was toxic some of the time. It was a kind of a shock and kind of a disappointment also when I went into my first, I remember job interview where I think at Zendesk, which I think was, like a pre-interview meeting. That was maybe like 100 guys and 5 women. Like I could count the women on one hand. And I remember just having this feeling, I was like, oh my God, this is what it's actually like as opposed to these events I've been attending. Yeah, but I think you've got to look after yourself. You can't compare yourself to others just for your mental health, I think. And I think it doesn't matter the gender there as well. I think you have to do whatever you've got to do to look after yourself and make the connections with the people around you on that human level. But yeah, I just think it's a mistake to compare yourself and think you have to prove yourself. I think you've got to just look at where you're going, think about your personal goals, how you personally evaluate success, what's meaningful to you in terms of growth and opportunities, and go after those and follow your own path essentially.
I think another really helpful thing is to get feedback, whether it be from your teachers or just your other classmates, because you might have your view of what yourself compared to others might be different to how they see you. So getting that feedback helps to sort of readjust that. And if you're at the top of your class, then you're probably doing something right, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback.
My advice would be to find a good group of friends.
Yeah.
So I didn't experience that, and that was I did a double degree in engineering, and majority
I've been
class male. But I was lucky enough to find a group of guys. So it's a group of 4 of us, and we got through 6 years of uni and didn't have an issue.
Yeah, in terms of in terms of your class, the girls have given you really good advice. Friends are the ones that will help you get through that. But after you finish your college as well, there is gonna be time where you will feel intimidated by the people you work with, or the guys who are with you working, and they have tens of years of experience, and you'll be like, I feel so intimidated in front of them. And there are 2 ways you can go. One, either you stop worrying about them and not think too much and learn to ignore that. The second way is, which I did, because I like to challenge myself a lot. So the way I deal with this situation is I like to prove myself, and I don't mind proving myself. I've done it quite a few times, even in terms of my career growth as well, where I have had to prove that I am capable of doing it. But in the end, it's also satisfactory. So whatever you feel comfortable with, but if you are a little bit more emotional, or you don't feel comfortable challenging yourself all the time, you feel pressure in that, then take the other path. And if you love challenging yourself, take the other path. But intimidation is gonna be always there, so yes, please don't be scared of that one. That's gonna be around always. I think even guys might feel intimidated by you in some other ways, that, oh, she's way more empathetic and she understands the user pattern way more than us, and that's fine as well, right? So they must be feeling as well, they just don't say it, I guess.
So, if you could, what would you say to your younger self? This is a question from Matt.
Say it again.
If you could, what would you say to your younger self?
Do tech earlier. Took me a lot of years to get there.
be more proactive. So if I did the engineering degree, but when I went into the organization, I spent 14 years before I decided I'm going to be an engineer.
I think be open to change. I started doing, in university, I started as mechanical engineering and then changed to math and then math computer science. But like, I guess before I got into university and kind of going on that journey was a really big deal for me. And then also, I never knew I was going to end up in Australia. So, but I've had a really good career here, so you never know where you're going to end up or what you're going to end up doing.
Well, I want to tell my 18 years old self that you have only one life and you have to live for yourself. Because at 18 years old, I chose a different path from software, and because of that I wasted 2 years and I joined university 2 years later. So I really regret that 2 years, even though without that 2 years I'm not who I am today. But if I can turn back time, I really wish to take back that 2 years.
My learning is, or what I would say myself, younger myself, is don't take too much pressure and put too much pressure on yourself. Focus on learning, not the results, and if your base is strong, you are going to grow.
Cool. So following up on that, this is a question from Max over here. Everybody's helping me out. As someone with 2 young daughters, as he has, what would you recommend for young girls thinking about getting into tech?
I know from research, I write coding hacks for young girls sometimes, so I learn a lot about this. I know that often girls don't see 2 things like role models, but they also don't understand a lot of times that tech can be very creative. So I think it's really, whenever I talk to young girls about it or run coding camps or help on coding camps, I'm always emphasising that it's so creative, and it's also how meaningful the problems it can solve are. And I think that's one with slightly older girls, that apparently they're more engaged by real world applications of tools and technologies. Where for boys, I think they're often, there is this gender difference observed in education, and boys can be a bit more comfortable with just playing around and not necessarily having a real world solution that they're trying to find. But yeah, apparently for girls it's very important to have real world problems and they can actually come up with something meaningful to solve that. That's what I've heard anyway.
Yeah, the same was
Right.
So I went to a talk where she was a teacher for high school, and she had said exactly the same thing, is that the way that she got females to get interested in what she was saying, so it's all about big data, so how to get them interested in thinking about it and solving problems with the big data. So they went something about turtles and how the temperature affects the gender. So they went, okay, so that's the problem statement. So they went, all right, now go find the data that will help you work out what the cause is. So, yeah.
Also, taking them to coding camps and female coding young kid events. So I used to run a Coder Dojo over in Perth, and we would have all-girl Coder Dojo days, and the young girls really enjoyed that, and then we always got really good feedback. As us as adults, it can be intimidating to be the only female in a room of males, so at a young age it's good to have them surrounded by other females to see that's a thing that women can do.
A friend of mine arranged a workshop for Code for Kids, and over there they have a software that the kid basically just play algorithm game that they can solve problem by placing some algorithm one chain after another. I did not join that workshop personally, but when I watched the video clip that they filmed from that day, the kid really enjoy it, and that is the way I think kid will start to learn how to code, because coding is not just about writing the code down, it's about the logical, the algorithm that you are going to solve your problem. So with that type of game, maybe it's just some daily life kind of things. For example, if you want to go from A to B, instead of going straight from A to B, is there any other way? Or it's just a simple question and it's all daily life task. So if you can ask the correct question and they give the correct answer, that's it. You are guiding them.
So So I'm going to jump in with a question that I wanted to ask, so it's not off slump. So throughout my career, I've had some of those career moments where you make a decision and it ends up changing the rest of your career. For example, I had a manager once ask me, how quick can you learn Android? And I said, I'll have it done by Monday. And while it was very hard, this was on a Saturday, by the way, via text. While it was very hard, it was the best decision I ever made in my career because my whole world has opened since then. Have any of you had a moment like that where you've taken a really unexpected step or made an unexpected decision that has really changed your life or your career?
I did. As I say, I started as embedded engineer in Android, and I had my first successful moment in embedded engineer. But one day before the exhibition in Japan, the boss came to and asked me to write an application that can show in front, and in front is just an application with a clock, and user can have a few click on some device that is not Android phone, but it's running on Android. And at that time I say, give me 2 days. After 2 days, I did not come up with anything. But 3 days after that, I came up with the first launcher, Android launcher, and that is how I get myself out from embedded engineer into application, and I like it.
Yeah, in terms of my personal growth, when I moved to Australia, I was already an Android developer, and my background is engineering, computer engineering as well. So that was not a big shift for me. But one day, my company's tech manager asked our tech team to submit some talks at Pause Fest. And I was at that time very fascinated by self-driving cars and Waymo. So at that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna submit my talk into Pause Fest, and then I'll see how I go. And I got picked up for that, and I was like, I have never given public speaking before. I had my own personal issues in terms of speaking English as well, because English is not my first language. But that was the best impromptu submission that I've made in my life. Since then, I've seen my career, my personal growth massively go upwards. And I think I'm very grateful that at that time I had the help as well from my mentor to go and give a talk. So, yeah.
Mine's not really super overnight or impromptu, but I did a secondment at managing the technology graduate program at my last job over in Perth. And at the time, I had just finished being a grad in the program myself, and I had expressed interest in doing this role, but in my head I was like, 5 years from now or something like that. And yeah, a mentor, sort of leader who was in the role and leaving was like, no, you should apply now. So I guess that applying now was a bit overnight. And yeah, I did the role for a year, and it was the best learning experience, and now I have management experience on me. Yeah.
I think for me, as I said, it took me a long time to go, I want to be an engineer. So I think when I first joined the organization, a lot of the things was like, I want to do delivery, but they're offshoring. Oh, I'll do delivery. Oh no, they're still offshoring. Oh, they're outsourcing. Okay, I'll wait a bit longer. So I think last September, we had a restructure, and they went, okay, everyone has to pick 3 roles. So I went through, they had all the different role types that you could pick from. I read through every single role description, went, what do I want? I want to be this one, this one, this one, and this one. That doesn't help. So finally, I narrowed it down to, I think, analyst. Still wasn't quite sure that I wanted to be an engineer. And then the ADA group, which was the Women in Tech at ANZ, they started a reskilling program. So they said, we want people who are think out of the box and want to take the plunge to become engineers at ANZ. So I went, maybe. So I put in an application, lots of questions. I filled out the whole essay, went, give it a go. And then I was like, came back for the group interview. I was like, okay, one day coding. We went, I think it was Python. So I was like, okay, that's all right. And then I was like, So they went, okay, shortlisted. So I had a choice to pick what are the new roles in the restructure or to go doing this for 6 months. So I was like, am I ready to be an engineer? Do I go with the safe role or do I go with the thing that I don't know? I was like, so agonized over it, pros and cons, asked lots of people. Finally decided I'm not going to get this opportunity again, so went for it. And then we did a boot camp for Java, and then so we did some full stack front end, back end. We did a project in React, and then after the program they place you as an engineer, and so that's how I got my current role. So now I'm a developer.
All right.
I don't have to answer.
We can always come back. Just got a few more questions here. So this is a question from Michael here. He's asking about imposter syndrome. And before I ask the question, hands up here who experiences imposter syndrome. There we go. Everybody in the room almost. So Michael's asking, have you experienced it and how have you overcome it?
I actually have a talk on this.
Please come back and do the talk.
Yeah, so I'm presenting it at a conference next week, and it was actually done as my very first conference talk, so it was a bit of a meta kind of thing going on with that. But in the talk I describe sort of my 3 steps are to first sort of recognize that it's happening, so understand what imposter syndrome is, and then sort of rationalize those thoughts, because a lot of times it's us telling ourselves something that isn't probably quite right, and then reflect on your achievements and your accomplishments and how you got to where you are. Yeah.
I would add to that 2 things, but I just forgot one. So one is, my response immediately, like in my mind, was actually I'm not sure it ever goes away, and I've also heard other people say that. Yeah, I think it will always be there. I think you always have that voice of doubt. I think a lot of us feel that a lot of the time. But yeah, I'd add to that list, I love those ideas, but also to choose more helpful thoughts. So to be really conscious and really vigilant about the thoughts you're choosing to have, because you can choose your thoughts and they really do impact how you feel. So I think that's an important way to kind of guard against letting imposter syndrome make you feel like you shouldn't do something. And yeah, definitely like do it anyway if you're having that feeling, like whatever the thing is about, do it.
I think it's also surrounding you with like-minded people. So if you want to have a particular thought pattern, find people with that thought pattern, surround yourself, so whenever you have those negative thoughts, they'll surround you with positive thoughts.
Outsource the labor.
Yeah. So then you'll see things reflected back at you, and you'll feel better.
Cool. So now hands up who's going to live with their imposter syndrome, because we don't think it's going to go away, and try and at least try some of these tips. There we go. Alrighty, so next question here. Again from Francesca, doing a great job up there. Because tech is always changing, how do you set your educational and personal development goals for yourself, especially if you're working full time?
One of the things that I do is focusing on, so every time I come across new technology, new word, anything, I write it down on my notes. And whenever I have time, like I'm in tram or something, I'm reading about that. And that keeps me up to date with at least information that is required for me to understand what that technology is. If I ever come across something where I can play around with it, then I'll give it a go. One of the things which I'll highly recommend you to do is never say no. Try to at least learn it once. If you can't do it later on, it's fine, but at least you give it a go. And that's how my learning process generally goes. And of course, there are enough resources online that you can self-learn, basically.
I think podcasts are good. So every morning on the train, I have something to listen to. So it gives me a random topic, so I learn something new every day.
I'm a big fan of those as well.
I'd say coming to meetups like this one, going to conferences, a lot of times people will do sort of an overview of how to get started in this new language or this new tech. It's really useful.
Yeah, and you really need to talk to people. because your knowledge, no matter how much you try to learn, is limited. So it's the best way and easiest way is to learn from other people who already know it.
So we've got a few more questions, and then we'll let you guys be free. But yeah, they're coming in thick and fast now on Slack. So it sounds like self-confidence. This is a question from Ira. Sounds like self-confidence is a vital component to success. What's the best way to ask for what you want?
Before I get my courage to really stand up here last year, I was quite shy from the crowd. So what I did before my first talk over here in GDG was to stand in front of my mirror and talk to myself and tell myself that you can do it. It was a ritual for 1 week before the talk, and it actually worked. So if maybe it's silly, but if you really need something, maybe that can help you.
I'm a big fan of the superhero pose. I stand like this for a few minutes, but it works really well.
For me, it's a balance of two things, like depending on what it is. It's knowing myself and like being able to be really clear on what is my truth. And Ira, by the way, is a colleague, so he's an ally here tonight. Thank you, Ira. But yeah, for me, it's being able to speak my truth and really knowing what that is, but also considering if it's, for example, in a work scenario and I'm talking about like pay or whatever, considering their position and considering how it can be like a win-win situation potentially for both of us, and being able to have a discussion, you know, knowing what kind of leverage I have or knowing how I add value, or, you know, having considered the other party's perspective, like really deeply and really understood and felt like where they might be coming from.
I find, again, surrounding yourself with advocates. So my work colleagues, we work together every day, 6 pods, talking to each other every day. So when you feel like you're unconfident, it's like you put it out there, what is it you want? And then they know what you want. So when you forget what you want, they will tell you what you wanted.
I think in terms of your career growth, specifically, if that question was for your career growth, I'll share a little bit of my growth. So I was a developer, and I was a tech lead as well at some point, but I wanted to go into people and engineering manager because I personally thought that I'm good at people side as well. So, but that's not, being good is not enough. You need to learn the skills to manage people. It's like understanding psychology, yeah? So what I consciously made a decision was to, because I didn't see career growth in my company, despite of me asking that that's where I want to go, I made a job move, specifically asking in the job interviews that that's what I want. If you're not going to give me that, I'm not interested in joining, because where I am, I'm already happy. I don't need to move because of my next tech move. I want to move because I want to be a manager. And I don't have that experience, being honest, brutally honest, but I would love to learn, and I'm passionate to go for lesser pay if that's the point, but I want to achieve that. And that helped me. That I got a job as an engineering manager later on, where I took care of people, delivery, development, and yeah, project management, all of that, and I got to learn all of the areas of basically product development. So yeah, making a conscious decision of changing your role as well as job if need be, company if need be, helped me.
All right, so I'm going to give this the last question, but do keep putting in any questions you do have on Slack, and I know I'll jump on there and answer some of them, and if anybody else has some answers for what people have put on there are a couple of individual questions which you guys might like to check out, but please do help everybody else out and reply to those questions, and maybe you can forge a connection. But the last question I think we'll have, and this comes from Kim, who's one of our co-organisers. She asks, what is the funniest tech experience you've ever had? So while you're thinking, I'm just going to say one of mine. This is when I was working on a very high stress project. I was brought into a meeting, you know, you've got this Sev1 defect, you know, it's very important, got to get through it. Nobody actually told me what the defect was. It was on the spelling of Tuesday, and I had spelt it incorrectly when doing my development. And so many people have been brought into this meeting for a Sev1 defect, and I said, oh, I could just go change it now. But of course, it took a long time to get deployed, so we had this constant meeting about Tuesday. Anybody else got any funny experiences?
A coworker and I were on sort of daily support, and we thought a good thing to do would be to clean up the old deployments on the servers, and we wanted to set up an automated script to do this. And the first time we ran this script, luckily we ran it in the test environment first, but it deleted absolutely everything, including like some important configurations and things that needed to be on that box. This wasn't a cloud-based environment. Yeah, so it deleted way too much stuff and blocked a whole bunch of people for at least a day until we got it fixed. But we got it fixed in the end, so all good.
Mine is not for me, but a story that I had is very similar. They deleted an instance of the management platform, and there was no backup. But luckily they had, because it was recently configured, they could redeploy it. So I think within a day they were up, back and running again.
Yeah.
So it's very scary to lose your whole instance.
No, it's scary tech moments.
I had one funny moment. Actually, it's not just one. I usually have to work very late when I was still in Singapore, and that day I stay in office until 12 plus, and the company is an IoT company, so at that time I described my job as turning on and turning off the light. So when I stay in office until 12 plus, the light suddenly turned on, and then it turned off, and then it turned on again, and then turned off again. And at that time I was working on some issues on the automation, so I thought it was my problem that I actually caused it. So I sat in office until 4 a.m. that day trying to fix it. And I skipped the morning the next day. When I came in, one of my colleagues told me that, did the ghost visit you the last night? Yeah, my 4 hours just because someone just tried to turn on and turn off the light.
All right, I think we might end it there. So thank you everyone for participating.